Hello everyone! So it's time for more of the Robber Hotzenplotz. A gloomy outlook. Meanwhile, what about Kasperl? After parting from Seppel, Kasperl followed his trail far into the woods. He grumbled to himself as he went along. He was cross with the Robber Hotzenplotz. He was cross with the miserable path full of roots and brambles which led to the robber's den. And last but not least, he was cross with Seppel's hat. Seppel's hat kept falling down over his face. He kept pushing it back on his head, but before he had gone another step or so further, it was sure to be sitting on his nose again. It might be better the other way around, thought Kasperl, putting the hat on back to front. But that didn't help either. Time after time, Kasperl had to push the stupid hat back on his head. Time after time, Seppel's green hat slipped down over his face again, until all of a sudden there was a loud crashing noise. Still wearing Seppel's hat, Kasperl tumbled down a hole. There were traps hidden by branches all around the robber's cave. So there was poor Seppel, one floor lower. All of a sudden it was not what he had expected. He rubbed his bottom. He was lucky he hadn't broken any bones. He might easily have broken something, falling so far and landing so hard. How stupid, thought Kasperl, looking at the pit. 4 smooth walls going straight up and that's all. How am I ever going to get out? But there was still Seppel. Seppel would be sure to find him and get him out. After all, Seppel was his best friend. Would he turn up before long? Kasperl pricked up his ears. He thought he heard someone coming. Unfortunately, someone was not his friend Seppel, but the Robber Hotzenplotz. It was a nasty shock for Kasperl when the robber's face, with its bushy black beard, peered over the edge of the pit. "Hello there, Seppel!" shouted Hotzenplotz. "You haven't broken your neck, I hope? Aren't you going to say hello to your kind uncle? Just think, Uncle Hotzenplotz has come to help you out. I suppose you do want to get out." Kasperl nodded. Of course he wanted to get out. Once he was out of the trap, the rest could take care of itself. He might get a chance to run away. "Listen," said Hotzenplotz. "Do exactly what I tell you. I'm going to let down a sack on this rope, like this, see? Now, get in the sack, Seppel." "In the sack?" asked Kasperl, hesitating. "That's right, get in the sack," said Hotzenplotz. "I'm going to haul you up in it. That's the only way you'll get out. Now get on with it, for heaven's sake, and don't leave your hat down there." Oh yes, Seppel's hat. Kasperl picked it up off the ground and put it on his head. Then he climbed into the sack and the Robber Hotzenplotz pulled him out of the hole. It was like going up in a lift. But once the robber had him safely out, he did exactly what Kasperl himself would have done in his place. He tied up the sack. Now Kasperl was well and truly caught. He struggled and shouted, but it was no good. Hotzenplotz flung the sack over his shoulder, and off they went to the robber's cave. "Well, here we are!" Hotzenplotz dumped the sack on the floor beside Seppel. "Now we'll see who's Seppel and who's Kasperl," he said. He opened the sack a little, just enough for Kasperl to put his head out. It was wearing Seppel's hat. The Robber Hotzenplotz would not let him out any further. "Now will you admit that you're Kasperl?" he gnarled at Seppel. Seppel was just going to repeat, "No, I'm not. I'm Seppel." But Kasperl got in first. He winked at Seppel. It might be quite useful if the robber mixed them up. "Why don't you answer me, fellow?" "What do you expect him to say?" said Kasperl, answering instead of Seppel. "You know best, Mr. Plotzenhotz." "Plotzenhotz? My name is Hotzenplotz." "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Lotzenplotz." "Stupid boy!" "Who, me?" said Kasperl. "My name is Hotzenplotz. Can't you remember even the simplest thing?" "Why, of course I can, Mr. Plotzenhotz." Hotzenplotz took a pinch of snuff. He saw that it was no use getting annoyed. Obviously, this Seppel was really as stupid as his green hat made him look. The robber carefully unfolded a big checked handkerchief. He sneezed and blew his nose. When he had finished blowing his nose, he put the handkerchief away, went over to Kasperl and Seppel, hooked his thumbs into his belt and addressed them. "You were going to spy on me. Now you're in my power," said Hotzenplotz. "That's how it is. You deserve no pity. I could make mince meat of you if I wanted to. But it doesn't happen to suit me. And why not?" He took another pinch of snuff and sneezed before going on. "Because I've thought of something better to do with you, that's why. You, Kasperl," he pointed to Seppel, "I'm going to chain you up. You will stay in the cave and work for me until you're blue in the face. As for you, Seppel," Hotzenplotz pointed to Kasperl, "I'm going to sell you." "Oh, goodness me," groaned Kasperl. "Who to?" "Who to? To my old friend, the wicked magician Petrocelia Suckerman." Petrocelia Suckerman. The wicked magician Petrocelia Suckerman was sitting in the kitchen of his enchanted castle, peeling potatoes and feeling cross. Petrocelia Suckerman was a great magician. He could easily turn people into animals or birds. He could turn mud into gold, but hard as he tried, he had never managed to cast the spell for peeling potatoes by magic. So unless he wanted to be stuck with nothing but noodles and rice, he was forced to put on an apron from time to time and get down to the dreary job of peeling potatoes himself. "All because I haven't got a servant," sighed the great magician Petrocelia Suckerman. "And why hadn't he got a servant? Because I've never been able to find the right one," he thought. "The right servant for me must be stupid. That's the main thing. I couldn't have a clever person in my enchanted castle, or he might find out my secrets. Magicians have to be so careful. I'd rather peel my own potatoes than make that kind of trouble for myself, though it is annoying." Petrocelia Suckerman had stopped working while he thought about his troubles. He was just going to start peeling potatoes again when the doorbell rang. "Wait a moment!" cried the great magician Petrocelia Suckerman. "I'm coming!" He ran into the hall and took hold of the heavy bolt. He was about to open the great gate of the castle, but at the last moment he realised he was still wearing the apron. Good gracious! Petrocelia Suckerman in an apron? Suppose anyone saw him in such an undignified costume. The doorbell rang again. "All right, I'm coming!" cried Suckerman. He tore off the apron, but where could he put it down? Abracadabra! The great magician Petrocelia Suckerman snapped his fingers. The apron flew back to the kitchen all by itself and hung itself up on its hook in the china cupboard. The bell rang for the third time. Petrocelia Suckerman pushed back the bolt and opened the gate. Outside stood the robber Hotzenplotz with a sack on his back. "Well, look who's here!" cried the great magician with pleasure. "How are you, old friend? Welcome to my castle. Won't you come in?" "Delighted," said Hotzenplotz. Petrocelia Suckerman led him into the study. This was a great treat for Hotzenplotz. The great magician took only his best friends into the study. Ordinary visitors were received in the great hall of the castle, if they were received at all, that is. Suckerman's study held an enormous bookcase full of thick leather-bound books. The desk, the windowsill, and the floor were covered with piles of more thick leather-bound books. Over the desk was a crocodile hanging from the ceiling. It was a stuffed crocodile. A skeleton stood in the corner, holding a lighted candle in its bony right hand. Petrocelia Suckerman sat down in his chair behind the desk and pointed to an armchair opposite. "Won't you sit down, old fellow?" Hotzenplotz nodded and sat down. "A pinch of snuff?" asked the great magician. "Try me!" Suckerman snapped his fingers and put his hand out into empty air. A silver snuff box suddenly appeared by magic. He offered it to Hotzenplotz. "Help yourself." Hotzenplotz took a huge pinch of snuff He sneezed so hard that the crocodile almost fell down from the ceiling. "Thunder and lightning, I call that snuff, old friend," he exclaimed. "It's 3 times stronger than pepper. Where'd you get it?" "My own make," said the great magician. "My special blend. It's called Nose Comfort. Here, have another." Hotzenplotz beamed with delight. He had an idea. He took a pinch of snuff and sneezed. Then he said, "Couldn't we do a deal?" "A deal?" asked Suckerman. "Yes," said Hotzenplotz, "with your snuff." Suckerman wrinkled up his nose. "What can you offer me?" he asked. "Don't you know I'm rolling in riches?" "Who said anything about money?" inquired Hotzenplotz. "I can offer you something much better than money. Guess." Petrocelia Suckerman frowned heavily and thought hard. Hotzenplotz waited a few moments. Then he said, "Shall I give you a hint? It's something you've been wanting for a long time. Something you just couldn't find." "Something I've been wanting for a long time? Something I just couldn't find?" The great magician pricked up his ears. Could it be a new book of magic?" "No, it's a servant." "What?" cried the great magician Petrocelia Suckerman. "Really? A servant? But is he stupid enough?" "As stupid as they come," said the Robber Hotzenplotz. "And where have you got him?" "In this sack here." Hotzenplotz undid the string of the sack. The sack fell to the ground. Caspel popped out with Seppel's hat on his head. Petrocelia Suckerman snapped his fingers. His glasses appeared by magic. He put them on his nose and looked Caspel up and down. Caspel looked as stupid as he could. "Is he as stupid as he looks?" asked the great magician Petrocelia Suckerman. "Every bit as stupid," said Hotzenplotz. "Good," said Suckerman. "Very good. What's his name?" "Seppel." "Aha! Well, Seppel, you're hired. Can you peel potatoes?" "Of course, Mr. Sagelman," said Caspel. Petrocelia Suckerman flew into a temper. "Say my name wrong, would you?" he cried furiously. "What's more, I'm not just Mr. You are to call me Great Magician Petrocelia Suckerman. Remember that." "Very well, Great Magician Seprodelia Swoggleswan," said Caspel innocently. "Thunder and lightning!" The great magician seized Caspel by the collar and gave him a good shaking. "Do you think I'm going to let you make fun of me? Do you want me to turn you into a monkey on the spot, or a worm?" Petrocelia Suckerman snapped his fingers, and lo and behold, his magic wand flew to his hand. But the Robber Hotzenplotz did not want him to cast a spell on Caspel. He caught Suckerman's arm and calmed him down. "Seppel isn't getting your name wrong on purpose, old friend," he explained. "He just can't remember it. He's too stupid." "Is that so?" said Petrocelia Suckerman. Then he laughed. "Hotzenplotz!" he cried. "I can't tell you how happy I am. I'm delighted with this Seppel of yours. He might have been made for me. I'll take him straight to the kitchen. He can start peeling potatoes. Then you and I will fix the price at our leisure." "I'd rather fix it now," said the Robber Hotzenplotz. "All right, I'll give you, shall we say, half a sack of snuff." "Half a sack?" replied Hotzenplotz. "That's not much for a whole servant." "Very well," said Petrocelia Suckerman. "You can have a whole sack. Done?" He offered Hotzenplotz his hand. "Done," said Hotzenplotz, shaking hands. "Seppel's yours. Now you can do whatever you like with him." And that's all for this time. I'll see you next time for more of the wicked Robber Hotzenplotz and Petrocelia Suckerman. Bye!